1 plus 1 always equals 2 in chemistry, 1 plus 1 always equals 3 in biology, and 1 plus 1 always equals 4 when you bring in organic chemistry.
This is an episode you do not want to miss. Let's get started. Welcome to the Soil Talks podcast. Today we're hopping in here with Tom Vander Heiden, the GM of Ag for ST Biologicals. Tom brings just a wealth of knowledge to the agriculture industry, over 43 years of experience and over 15, specifically on microbiology, soil health, those types of things, really getting the soil healthy so crops can grow. Like I said, Tom Vander Heiden, he's the general manager of ST Biologicals. Tom was born and raised in northeastern Wisconsin on a dairy farm, which is still in the family. That's cool. It's not out of the family. A lot of farms are leaving. Tom has been in the agriculture industry, like I said, for 43 years. Wealth of information, not too many people left in it after that long. So that's great that you're still in it and you're still loving it. And the last 15 plus years of that time have been dedicated to soil health and improving customers' bottom lines, which is really at the end of the day most important, especially with synthetic fertilizers, chemicals, all those things. These farmers need help. They need a lifeline. So that's great that you're doing that. And ST Biologicals follows a program-based approach to improving soil health and assisting farmers with education first mentality, which is perfect. And that's why we're doing this together, because we also believe that same thing, Tom. We need that education for these farmers. Yeah, welcome today. We just appreciate you being on.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the conversation and Brandon and being able to relay some of this information to your customers.
Yeah, as well as, I guess, both of our customers, right?
Yeah,
all of our
that's
customers.
exactly right.
At the end of the day, it's we are all in this together trying to build soil health. They're wanting to know. They're hungry for information. And so instead of being a competitive model, I feel like we're all better together. And if we can push this information out and share our knowledge, it's going to be better. So we'll start off with the origin story, though, Tom. Brought up, I guess, on a dairy farm in Wisconsin. And I know that your father, I believe, used to use manure, or,
Yep.
there was a manure argument on that farm, right?
Yes, it was.
And I'd like to get into that. I mean, did he mix the manures into the soil? What did he do exactly? And how was that upbringing?
Well, again, my dad came through the Depression, so he was a part of that, actually started this dairy farm, and we were the typical small northeastern Wisconsin dairy, 60 cows, started out at 45, went to 60. We had chickens, we had hogs, we had beef, we had a huge garden, all the things that, I'm Dutch, so all Dutch families do from that standpoint. Okay.
Yeah, a regenerative system, really.
Yeah, it totally. And again, so when you are 16 and 15, 16 years old, you know a lot as a kid, right? So dad doesn't know as much as you do because you're in school and he's just on the farm. So we would argue about, in the spring of the year, when we had to clean out the chicken coop and had to clean out the hog pens and had to clean out the beef building, we had to haul all the manure back to where we were at with our manure pits. So anyway, when we did that, we would talk, and I was like, it'd be better just to put this on the manure spreader, haul it all out, and go from there. But he always said, nope, we're going to mix it 6 buckets of dairy manure, a couple buckets of beef manure, 1 bucket of hog manure, 1 bucket of chicken litter, and then you spread it over the top of the manure spreader and out you go. And we did that time after load after load after load, and so at that time, it seemed ridiculous to me. So when I started on this journey, basically 15 years ago, Brandon, with Gary Zimmer at Midwestern BioAg, I started to learn and understand and realize how smart my dad was, even with just a 6th grade education at that time, and how we understood the makeup of each of the manures and how that gave them a balanced fertilizer versus just hauling out chicken litter on certain acres, hog manure on certain acres, and we would have had not the balance that we did. It took me till I was 50 to realize how smart my dad actually was. So I was a really slow learner. So he wasn't. So from there.
Yeah. He wasn't monoculturing manure per se, right?
No, he wasn't. We were the very typical type dairy. We weren't monoculturing anything. We had oats, we had hay, we had corn, and we had basically every crop that could be. Yeah, and every type of manure that could be had, right, from that standpoint. So from there.
Man, that's wonderful. Really, It's funny you look back that far and really, like I said, Tom, a regenerative system put in place 50 years ago. That's amazing, and it's just the way that things work. So that's really cool. And then how did the dairy nutrition, I guess, from the University of Wisconsin River Falls lead you to soil health? Like, is that what led you to soil health, or what really led you to soil health? What would you say? What was that kind of like aha moment when you realized that the plant health is a direct reflection of soil?
Actually, I was working for another large major company in the dairy nutrition field, and I was working on salt issues in the Arizona market and started to realize that everything I was trying wasn't working to reduce the salts in 4-H's and to do those aspects of it. And so looking back into my history and talking with some other industry individuals, I realized that the only way to basically offset some of the salts was through carbon, through use of biology. And it basically, when I started researching it, probably 18 years ago, I realized that these two follow dairy nutrition and regenerative agriculture basically follow perfectly in the same strides. So everything that I was trying to do on the dairy nutrition side, I could do if I found the right products, the right team members, things like that. And that's what we did. And basically, when I went to work for Midwestern BioAg, it really taught me then that there was this total correlation between the dairy nutrition um, and the soil health. And going back, Dr. Lee Whitwer, who was one of my professors in dairy nutrition, was a Albrecht principal. And he worked underneath Dr. Albrecht in Missouri. And as a grad student, and when he was teaching us the Albrecht methods, going back to some old notes. It's all detailed in there. And it's just like, this is crazy. That was almost 25 years before that was actually finding that I was 29 years earlier, finding that I was studying it. So the two go correlation
That's
hand in hand. And, when I went to work for Gary Zimmer was that individual who also had a degree in animal nutrition and found the Brookside and through his aspects. So all of us together, we kept learning and understanding. And when I went on to start ST Biologicals, then it just made sense to continue to take all the principles that we had learned and understood and build a team around that. And that's what we've done.
Man, that's perfect. Yeah. And it's amazing that it was laid out for all these years and really kind of covered up. I hate to say it, really that's the industrial agriculture revolution, right? Like
Yeah.
when everything changed, right? And it was covered up, but the truth is still there. The books are there. You just have to do a little digging and you can see quickly what the truth is. And that's neat also that you got to work with Gary Zimmer. Gary Zimmer's, I like to say he's the godfather of biological
Yeah.
agriculture. I'd say he's up there, and I
Mhm.
got to meet him last year actually at the Commodity Classic. That was a great time as well. Wealth of knowledge. But yeah, no, that's great. So that's that aha moment. You'd been studying it, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I pieced this together. And now it's like, let's just put this together. Let's put a team around it and go out. You were learning, collectively learning. So that's great. I know your guys' tagline there at ST Biologicals, or one of them is soil speaks,
Mhm.
listen.
Correct.
And what does that phrase mean in practical day-to-day sense for a farmer, would you say?
Well, it's a matter of being out in the field. So one of our really good dealers in Kansas that we work with and a great soil health, his comment to me when we first started was that, the greatest limiting factor of yield in a farmer's field is the farmer's shadow. Okay. Not being out there and walking those fields and looking at it. We dig a lot of soil. We look at soil. We feel it. We smell it. We touch it. We do everything, looking at the plant roots, washing them, doing all that. All of that tells us through that, all those viewpoints, I guess, and being in the field, that is the most critical aspect. So when we're out there, basically looking at all these things, the soil's telling us everything we need to know. We just got to listen and understand it. And dairy cattle do the same thing through their manure, through how they act and things like that. So if we just watch the natural signs from these aspects of animals or soils, we're definitely going to learn and understand everything we need to know about a certain type of soil or a certain water or whatever. Because again, crops respond to the salts that are in water. And as those continue to increase, that is a major aspect of what plants will tell us by it burns on the edge of the leaves, not nodulating as well. All the things that lead to the plants not being as responsive as they need to be. So soil speaks.
Yeah, no.
We listen.
Yeah,
That
go
was
ahead.
the tagline because we spend all summer and everything until the ground freezes, and then when it thaws back out, we're right back in the fields again. So that's where we spend our time.
That's great. And it's funny you say that when you say, we touch it, we feel it, we smell it, you get down, you get dirty. Our biological beyond organic fundamentals course talks a lot about that. You don't have to have a lot of tools. You have to have some willpower to go out and actually do the work, right? You have to dig up roots, you have to dig up plants, you have to look at them. And that's going to tell you a lot, about what the soil's doing, about what they need, the plants actually need, what the soil needs, those types of things. So that's great. Now as we move beyond, I guess traditional just NPK, what traditional soil tests often miss, or what do they, or why do they traditional soil tests often miss the living part of the equation? Like we always look at phys chem, right? Or that's what a lot of people do. But, why do they miss that? They don't really take that into account, correct?
That is correct. Because again, universities, scientists, chemists, everything has 1 + 1 always has to equal 2. Okay. So Brandon, when you're dealing with this, and you're dealing with biology, it doesn't always equal 1 + 1 = 2. Okay. A lot of times it's 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 or even 5 from that standpoint, because you multiply the abilities of those plants, the roots, the microbial population, all of those things lead to the next opportunity to increase that yield. So soil tests are based on chemistry. This much acid on this much soil gives you this much phosphorus, this much potassium. And again, my true belief is, NPK are 3 very important nutrients. All right. But they're not the 3
Absolutely.
most important nutrients for a plant. That's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. If you don't have carbon, you don't have hydrogen, you don't have oxygen, the plant can't survive and will die.
It's not going to
So
uptake any NPK, right?
that's right. It's
It's
not
a
going
dead
to.
plant.
If we don't have oxygen, we live for a few minutes. If we don't have carbon or water, we live for a few days. If we don't have carbon or food, we can live for a few weeks. Okay. Plants can do kind of the same thing. If they don't have oxygen, you're going to corn specifically, you're going to denitrify it. It just can't breathe underneath that in a very wet soil. Okay. And so when
Sure.
saturation is there, oxygen is gone. But again, so universities and all of the things that conventional agriculture has basically based on is chemistry, not in biology and things like that. And that's why it's become so critically important to understand that soil's the rumen of the soil is there. So we have the same exact microbial populations in that soil. And so the terminology of soil is the rumen of the plant, then that's where it comes from, because that's what it comes down to is the biology in there, the bacteria, the fungi, the trichoderma, the mycorrhizal fungi, all of those things are critically important to a plant for being able to handle stress, work through things, all of those aspects of it from there, Brandon. So again,
Yeah.
it's all a part of this whole greater thing. So again, I had, I had an older gentleman who came through a lot of years of tough times, was a huge proponent, and he would use the terminology of, 1 + 1 always equals 2 in chemistry, 1 + 1 always equals 3 in biology, and 1 + 1 always equals 4 when you bring in organic chemistry, because it's the organic acids, it's all of those aspects that really promote to the next level. And we haven't even understood
Absolutely.
some of the next levels yet. I mean, that's the neat part of this and what keeps me going. We're always learning. It's something new every day that we can learn from our customers, as well as what we can learn from just studying things ourselves. We're working on water projects right now for irrigation water. And I think, taking 2, 3 different chemistries and making a program approach to it, we can do a lot to improve water quality coming through irrigation that's hurting our crops today.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And and that's the thing I like what you're saying regarding that, because and that's the funny thing is, like, you look at conventional soil testing or regular soil testing, they're using heavy acids.
Right.
Like plant exudates, they're not, I mean, it's a different type. It's a different acid that's being, basically put out in order to cycle and to make things available to feed bacteria. It's a lot, lower level acid that's being used. And so that's one of the biggest things. And you're right, it takes this whole ecosystem, right, Tom, in order to make things work. And that's what's exciting about it. Like I said, I started in 2008 in this. That's when I started my company. And, I feel like we're just scratching the surface. Like it's just getting exciting now. I mean, it's been a lot of years. So you
Mhm.
look at it and and we just know this much about really
Right.
what's going.
Well, truthfully, in our scientific world, we know more about the soil on Mars than we know about our own soil. Okay. I mean, they've
Imagine that.
studied the soil on Mars more than they've studied. A lot of people have studied our own soil surface. Okay. And that's why we work with the Haney test. We work with TND testing. We work with all of the biological testing of PLFA and others, a microbiome type
Yeah,
testing, because it's critically important to understand all those aspects, Brandon, of what we want to accomplish from there. Okay. And every field
absolutely.
in every area is different. That's what makes it so exciting. I work all over the US, and it is always a different aspect of what happens around in each of the areas that we cover.
Well, that's great. Yeah. And I was actually going to get right into that. There's modern diagnostics, these tests, right?
Uh-huh.
It's a big deal. And the Haney test is probably the best test out there, or I would say it is the best test out there to really see soil, what the soil's doing. Can you just give us a brief explanation on that, on how it measures soil health rather than just the available nutrients that are there?
Sure.
Can you give just a little bit of a, yeah,
Yeah. Again, so it measures nitrogen in a lot the same way that the chemistry tests do, or the conventional tests do, but it measures the inorganics, and it measures it through these, as you said it earlier a few minutes ago, basically these non-harsh acids. Okay, so it's measuring it through the H3A, which then basically looks at the same type of acids that the roots give off to release calcium or to release potassium and to release sodium and chlorides and all the different nutrients that are needed by that plant. So the Haney test gives us all of those aspects. And then they also measure the carbon side of it, which really helps to give us an idea of how much of that ground is available to our microbiology to feed them. So that's a critical piece with microbial available carbon, the MAC percentage. So they use these non-harsh acids to measure what that plant actually can get out of the soil. So when you tie together a Haney test, and then it gives you the opportunity to look at the amount of phosphates and all the other nutrients that's there through those less harsh acids, and also through conventional testing, and do a comparison, then you can start to put economics to it. I mean, I've worked just recently with a gentleman in Kansas, and basically by doing the Haney test, we can see what the biology has been utilizing and how he's been growing. He's going to save about 20 units of nitrogen per year on his corn crop. Well, that's $10 at 50 cents a unit. And in some cases, that's going to be our profitability this year, unfortunately. So that's
yeah,
part of what we're looking at, is how can we save nutrients and either get the same yield or increase yield by doing that. And that's what a Haney, and then you put it in conjunction with the TND. And then if a
yep,
farmer's having a major issue, you can look at a PLFA, which is the
yep,
phospholipid fatty acids that are done. And it really just helps build a picture that we can look at. It's more 3D than it is basically one flat piece of paper looking at it saying you're short on phosphate. And so you need to put down all of this phosphate. And it's like, no, the TND, you've got over 800, 900 pounds of pure phosphate, not P2O5, phosphate. So that's a part of this whole process that we do. So the Haney is one tool in this toolbox to help us start to paint a 3D picture of soil and plant health from there. Because again, then you also get the sulfida test, or the carbon dioxide testing,
yep,
and you get the estimation on soil health, and you can really start to gauge what are the things we're doing and how they're helping that farmer over this period of time. Okay. And when you aren't
absolutely.
improving, you have more tools in your toolbox to continue to look at and say, how can we improve this next year further? Okay. And again,
Yep,
in Colorado or in the upper Midwest, we only have one shot a year to do this.
yeah.
California, Florida, and other areas of this country have 2 and 3 times the opportunities to plant crops and continue to improve Up here in the Great North, we don't have those opportunities. We have one crop a year, so we've got to make the most of it because we've only got so many years left to be able to do this. So from there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what's exciting about it. And I really liked your explanation on that of all these different tests that you do use, even like like the biome testing, right? Soil DNA testing. And it's an important part. It's more of a snapshot, but at the end of the day, you can see kind of what's going on in that soil ecology at that point in time, which is important. If there's certain droughts or things like that, you can test for all types of things. But I really feel like these tools that we're talking about, more modern soil testing, modern diagnostics, it's kind of like hooking your soil up to a machine, right? Let's figure out what's going on with it, and then let's start putting inputs in and figuring out how we balance it, what's going on, how we increase soil health, crop yields, less dependency on inputs, all of those things. So that's great. That's exactly what that we look at as well. Next thing, the biology gap. Why farms might have a high nutrient level, but all their plants are starving. I call it the biology gap. The biology's gone. Explain that a little bit.
Well, basically, it's similar to when a cow goes off feed or an animal goes off feed, or you're not feeling well yourself. Your stomach, your microbiome in your gut or in their guts isn't necessarily getting everything out of that food that you're eating. So I specifically, if I'm talking to a cattle guy, it's really easy to help them understand, because the first thing that if a cow goes off feed, meaning she isn't eating as much as she needs to, one of the first things you do is look at sugar. Okay. How can I improve that biology that's out there already? Okay. So that's one tool that's there. But the big gap here is that when we're utilizing a lot of the conventional type chemicals or fungicides or insecticides, all of those are taking a toll on that microbiome. And so you can have all the nutrients you want in that field, and the only way a plant can take them up is as an ion of fertilizer. So it can only take up a K or a P or an N. It can't
Yes.
it can't take up P2O5 or K2O specifically. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are government.
Has to be cycled, right?
That's right. And the only way to cycle it is through biology, because biology is what breaks them apart, breaks them down, and does those aspects of what we need. So you can have all the nutrients you want out there, and if you don't have biology to give you phosphate, don't have mycorrhizal fungi, you will not get an adequate amount. You can throw it, it'll go into solution some from the fertilizers, but it's also going to get nabbed by the rock, calcium and magnesiums and so on and so forth, and tie it up.
Yep.
And that's
Absolutely.
so, it comes down to we have lots of nutrients in these soils, and we have plenty to be able to work with. The total nutrient digestion or TND tests show us that. But again, it's a matter of getting them available to that plant. And the only way to do it is to do it by biology. And again, the Lord put all of those animals, all that livestock underneath the soil for a specific reason. And that reason is to feed that plant. And that plant is there to produce a seed, and that seed is there to either reproduce itself or to feed us as animals or humans from that standpoint. Okay. I mean, it's the perfect
Absolutely.
cycle from that standpoint. The buffalo and the elk and the deer and all the animals on the prairie survive for years without ever having to have anything else happen. And from that standpoint, and our Native Americans had the same way of looking at it. So we've got to look at it kind of
Yeah.
that same way. Okay. So it's a
I
critical
like it.
piece yeah. So again, but again, measuring that by chemistry, it's almost impossible, because if you put out a certain amount of potash on a field and certain amount of potash out on the field, it's not all going to be available first year. It's not always going to be available in second year. And if there's too much calcium there, it's out of balance, it's going to get tied up, and you're not going to get that ability of that plant to really release it. Okay. Because again, we can
Absolutely.
give off a certain amount of there. If we continually till our fields, we're going to lose our mycorrhizal fungi, and those fungi then aren't going to release that phosphate. Okay. I mean, and when we're using heavy fungicides in some of these orchards and that across some of the conventional agriculture, I've tested a lot of fields for mycorrhizal fungi with PLFA, and it's hard to find, because they've been nailed so many times with fungicides that they aren't really proliferating and growing from that standpoint.
Yeah, the spores might be laying in the soil, but the actual true mycorrhizal fungi, it's the fungal threads are dead, everything's dead. Well, no. And that's the thing is, when it all comes down to it, God did put it all here for a reason,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that's the reality of it. And when you start, that's more about the soil speaks, we
Mhm.
listen, those types of things,
Yep.
when you really get out there and look at it, you can really see the intertwinings of it. A lot of it's like a forest, right? Like you look at forests, how they operate. They're not tilled. They're not
Mm-mm.
fertilized. None of those things have happened, and they do go through times where they're doing well and they're doing bad.
Mhm.
But above all, they have resiliency over time. So, and they definitely have a good microbial community and good ecology in the soil in order for them to thrive. So, those redwoods in California aren't fertilized every year,
No.
I mean, there's a lot there going on.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
now
exactly.
yeah, and I want to get in now to the, kind of like the framework. So I want to kind of walk through the ST Biological's core principles. We got about 6 of them here. These are the 6 principles that you guys kind of look at in soil health. With that
Mhm.
first one, number 1, which we kind of just talked about, minimize soil disturbance, reduce
Mhm.
tillage. Why is that so important?
Well, again, it comes down to that's the house of most of those microbes. Again, in 1 teaspoon of soil, there's more microbial population than there is people on this earth. Okay. So that's a critical piece that we have to understand that every time we disturb that soil, again, sometimes we have to. I'm not a purist no tiller. I'm not a purist strip tiller. I'm not a purist till person. But again, tillage is a tool in the toolbox that we have to use when we need it. And so when we don't
Yes.
need it, let's not overdo it. Okay. And John Deere developed a plow to break the prairie. And, I think, it wasn't that it was a bad thing. It was something we had to break. We just kept breaking it and breaking it and breaking it for too many years. And we burned off a lot of our humus. We burned off a lot of our organic matter. So again, if we go back to looking at it, it's a minimize the disturbance of the soil. It's not don't disturb the soil. Okay, from there.
Sure. And I like that. Where we're at out here in Colorado, we have a lot of furrow irrigation. And
Uh-huh.
there's some people, some companies around here that are starting to make some implements that you can do a no-till or kind of a low-till type of a system in furrow irrigation. It's a tough thing to deal with. We don't have a lot of sprinklers. We definitely only get about, I think, 12 inches of annual precipitation out here where we're at a year. It's a desert, and so it's tough. But the reality is sometimes, and you do have to break that soil. But if you do break the soil and you do till it and you do have to, deal with that, that's where we also like to say, hey, let's come in, let's get the biological populations reestablished. Don't do it year after year if you don't have to. Out here, a lot of the guys that are out in our area, they do, they're just afraid. It's furrow irrigated. They can't stand the fact that if their furrows get backed up, they have a mess in their field and their field's flooding and all these things. And so it's probably been the hardest thing out here where we're at to get them to break away from doing that. But, there are more and more as time comes, we grow sweet corn out here, all different types of crops. They're starting to figure out like, whoa, let's use a drone to spread seed through corn. They're
Right.
starting to figure out ways to be able to keep that roots in the ground, more of a no-till system. And that's the next step that, kind of is your guys' framework, I guess, or your core
Mhm.
principles. Keep roots in the soil or keep roots in the ground, right? Living roots year round if possible. Cover crops. That is important. Why, Tom?
Well, again, the food source for the biology is the root exudates, the acids, the organic acids that those plants give off. Okay. So if
Yep.
there's nothing there, so again, I relate a lot back to, especially because the livestock side of it. You dry a cow off, but you don't quit feeding her during a milking lactation time frame. You have to continue to feed her in order to keep her alive.
Sure.
So soil's the same way. If you're going to keep this biology alive, you have to keep that soil feeding that all that livestock that's underneath there. Again, livestock in that soil is greater than anything that we could raise above the ground. Okay, so that's what we have to really concentrate on. And again, it's a big uphill battle with a lot of farmers to help them understand that this is something that's needed. And again, with drone technology, with new robot technologies that are coming, all of these things, Brandon, can really enhance the ability of these farms to be able to do kind of to take the next step in this soil health aspect. So those plants feed that we would say living roots feed the next generation of biology that's in the soil. It lives for such a short period of time. It's always turning over. It's always regenerating itself. And so we have to understand that that's a critical piece that farmers need to really concentrate on. As we get somebody on that, it really shows. I mean, the farmers can see the difference in all areas of the country where they actually get that down and start utilizing them. They're just like, in 1 2 years, man, this soil just turned. I can see the difference already. It's soft. It's easy. I was talking with a producer yesterday, and he's like, I never use covers, but I did this one time, and that field still shows a difference than all the other ground around it. So, and that was 3, 4, or 5
Yeah.
years ago. And he's just like, I can still see it today. So from there.
See that, and that's great. Like you said, it's feeding that cattle, right?
Uh-huh.
It's a big
Yep.
herd. It's a big
Uh-huh.
herd in the soil, I tell you, right?
Yep.
And
It is.
yeah, no, it's the best
Yep.
way to do it, right? I mean, that's the best
Yep.
way.
Mhm.
Next thing, I guess that'd be the third or the middle pillar, kind of, as integrate organic nutrients, right? So if we're going to put nutrition into that soil, at all means, if possible, let's use something that's organic or that's a biotic food, right? A biotic fertilizer, something that's going to feed biology, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. And again, you can overdo a really good thing because compost is a great opportunity. Chicken litter is a great opportunity for organic nutrients. Any of the manures are all a great opportunity. But again, don't go overdo them. Overdoing a nutrient is as bad or even worse than what a not having enough out there. Okay. So if you
Yes.
go do too much, you can start disease cycles. You can start tying up other nutrients. The Mulder's Circle is a great tool to help producers understand. If you haven't ever looked at Mulder's Circle, that's Mulders, just type it into Google and it'll pop up for you. And you can see what ties up what and what nutrients work together and which nutrients are antagonistic to each other. And so getting those out, getting any type of organic nutrients out there always generates more nutrients in the long run for those plants because the root exudates are able to work on them easier and better, and they can then get more release. And you can a lot of times control salts going out there, or sometimes it actually enhances the abilities of those plants to work together with that manure or the higher quality fertilizers that way. So again,
Absolutely.
most conventional fertilizers are all high in salts, and you have to continue to watch that because that is the number one issue that's affecting the world agriculture is the salts that we keep putting into the ground over and over and over again today.
Yep. And that's exactly what we talk to a lot of the producers we work with, at least in our area, in some of those regions where there's a lot of salt in the soil. It's like, right, like you're adding salt to an already salty soil. And at some point, just like myself, take too much salt in, your lips dry up, you don't feel good, like you dehydrate, right? And so by doing that over and over, it is wise, and using those, fertilizers that are organic that will feed soil biology. But like you said as well, too much of a good thing is a bad
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
It does
Exactly.
equal bad. And if you're
Yep.
trying to grow fungal populations, you might use a different type of organic fertilizer
Mhm.
versus utilizing, something to grow bacteria, things like that. But the biggest thing is if you can figure out a fertilizer that is low in salt and it's good for bacteria, I look at it as more of an investment, right? Versus it being just a direct expense to that farmer, the producer. Increased plant diversity. So whenever we're cover cropping or even, I guess, growing, I mean, it's hard to do it whenever you're growing, obviously, corn and beans and things like that, right? Those are pretty much monocropped per se, but plant diversity is really important.
Yes.
And the reason why.
Well, again, it's the roots, what they give off to get the nutrients that they need. So legumes give off different nutrients to release more calcium, to release more potassium, specifically say alfalfa. Those are the two most critical nutrients that it needs. So it's going to give off more root exudates that way. Grasses need more phosphate, need more nitrogen. So it gives off certain root exudates to get that out of the soil. Okay, so oats is the best crop you can grow to get mycorrhizal fungi to reestablish because it needs a high phosphate level. So all of these different types of plants, specifically, say legumes with soybeans, you got the rhizobium there instead of non-nitrogen fixing bacteria. So you want those. You want to grow protozoa. So you've got to have the opportunity to have nutrients there that really attract the earthworms. So they're going to feed on the protozoa. So that helps with that part of it. So when you're dealing with the diversity that allows us then to get all of these different root exudates to release more nutrients across the board. Now, don't try to go from one species to 20 species in 1 year because you'll cause yourself angst in every opportunity from that standpoint. Take it 1, 2, 3 steps at a time. Don't try to go again. Gabe Brown is exactly correct on a lot of the things that he does and talks about, but he took years to get to the point of where he utilizes these types of levels of the numbers of species. And that's not something that we can try to take one producer today and get them to those types of things. It's just too hard. The ground's not ready. So one of the things that we always tell our producers is you have to allow your ground to earn the right to grow all of these different crops. It can't do it overnight. And again, species of plants in this allows that. So being able to have small grains in the rotation, being able to have corn, soybeans, being able to use alfalfa in areas where it's needed, all of those things can really help. Clovers, again, each has a different root structure. Canolas, rape seeds, those are critically important in a lot of mixes. Turnips and sugar beets are all critically important. But again, one monocrop of it or one, that's it. And the crop is having a hard time, or the ground's having a hard time getting all the nutrients it needs to survive in the biology.
Sure. Yeah, no, I like that, and that's a really good point, and I've always thought that same thing. I think what Gabe's done is a great thing. It's been over 30 years, it didn't happen overnight. And there's a lot of guys that want to jump in and want to do it. And, he does a lot of conferences all over and it gets him excited. And I think, that's the biggest thing. I agree 100% with you that, this happened over a 30-year plus time span. This didn't happen, in 2026 or in 2027. It takes years to get there. But as you figure out your system, you can definitely build it. It just takes time if you go that route. And then adding those proper, diverse microbiological inoculants into the system. That's another thing that will start helping speed up that process, getting you to that regenerative point a lot faster. But you have to use it as a tool, just like any of these things. They're just tools, right? In the toolbox, and we got a big toolbox. So let's figure out what tools we need and then utilize them properly.
Right. Again, if you need to take a dual off, you're not going to do that with a 3/4 inch drive on a ratchet set. Okay. You've got to have bigger drive in order to get it off. So again, when you get to that point, you've got to just take those tools and make sure you're using the right size. And so if you're short on fungal population, then you have to use a broad spectrum fungal type, biological. Okay. What we spend a lot of time working on is on what is out there. Is it all gram positive and gram negative and rhizobium, or is there trichoderma? Is there mycorrhizal fungi? Is there all of these different fungi that we need in that soil? So we've got to be able to then plant the right crops and harvest the right types of manures, Brandon, out of those covers. So if it's it's bacterial based today, you don't want to go plant a oat crop and have it grow to 6 inches and then have it go into the ground because it's only going to grow the bacteria faster. You want to let it get up, fall, get a little bit rank, get a little bit brown manure and get it out there. Okay.
Yep. Get a little bit woodier, right? A little bit harder to break down.
Yeah, exactly. So then your fungal population will attack it. That'll go after it. Okay. Again, it's the concept of you've got green, which is again, referring it back to the nutrition side of it. You got the green, the really digestible, highly digestible fiber. So you got that, and that works in the ruminant. Then you need the long fiber to create the fiber mat that's in that rumen animal in order to do that. Then you need the black manures or the grains in order to get that digestion to go, to really function at its highest point. And then sometimes you have to have a little bit of nitrogen that goes in there as NPN nitrogen, and you start looking at it and you look at correlations. It's amazing how all of that correlates together exactly. So
and carbon and nitrogen ratios, things like that, in order to be able to start that breakdown process. No, that's great. And then pillar 5, keep the soil covered, right? So yes, we're growing cover crops. Yes, we want plant diversity, but it's important to keep the soils covered, correct?
correct. Yeah, flat and black is not what you want, because again, there's nothing there for them to protect those livestock in that soil. Okay, so you got to keep it covered with the cover crop. You got to keep it covered with corn stalks or with the stubble that's out there. You've got to keep some alfalfa growing in the fall of the year in order to have that lay down a little bit to help protect that ground so it doesn't blow away. I'm presently in North Dakota working with some producers up here, and we have black snow, and it's the dirt blowing in the snow when it blows all over the place. That's not what we want, because that is the dust bowl all over again in this situation. The fastest we lose so much ground to erosion every year, we have to try to limit that as much as we can, Brandon. So again, trying to leave stubble on top, not deep tilling it in, and then having it blow around. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's inconvenient and it doesn't work. But again, the tool in the toolbox to keep it covered as much as you can for as long as you can, especially in areas where we only crop once a year, like we do here in the north.
Gotcha. Yeah. And we're seeing it out here, even, out here where we're at, we have the San Juan mountain range south of us. And in the springtime, when we get big windstorms, it'll even carry dust all the way from Utah, and the mountains will literally turn brown or they'll turn red, like on top of the snow, which then increases obviously also the snowpack, right? Or the decrease of snowpack. Like it just melts so much faster because now you have the sun just literally eating through it, so we don't want to see that. So that's why it is important to keep that soil covered, so we keep our soil on our property, the stuff we're building, right? We don't want to give it to everybody else.
Exactly. Yep. Keep it on your own farm. Don't give it to your neighbors in this situation. Be a good neighbor, but don't give it all away. So from there.
Yeah, you got it. Especially
Yep.
for the guys that aren't doing soil health practices, right?
Yep.
They're only going to
Exactly.
benefit big time. So,
Yeah.
and then the last thing that you guys really look at is the ongoing biological side, right? Keeping that soil alive, which it
Yep.
all kind of intertwines, right? The roots in the soil covered, the diversity of the plants, that all kind of leads back to that funnel point of keeping ongoing biology in the
Yep.
fields.
Well, again, it comes back to we really promote the use of livestock on farms as much as we can. Now, not everybody can handle livestock or wants to handle livestock, but getting those manures, getting those animals out there, it's amazing. I mean, again, there's different hooves for different animals, and that was out there for cutting in the grasses, and the different on the prairies was what was there, the birds, keeping them opportunities there. So again, it's all of those aspects of keeping all of that different biology, allowing that to happen. I mean, people will make comments. Yeah, when I was a kid, I always saw the white birds come flying in when we worked the soil, and now we don't see them coming as much. Why is that? Because the earthworm population isn't there. Okay. I mean, from that aspect of it. And, they're like, yeah, but we don't ever see hardly earthworms anymore. Well, let's go find out how. So we go out and, if you we can measure those earthworms by mixing mustard water together. So mustard and a gallon of water, and 3/4 of a cup of mustard, and pour it on the soil, and you watch the earthworms come popping out because you irritated their skin if you don't. I know the first time we did that in Arizona, the farmer was looking over my shoulder. He's just like, "Are you kidding?" You could see the earthworms coming out of the ground, and he's like, "I don't know if I've ever seen an earthworm from that standpoint that way." If you want to look it up, you can
Sure.
look it up
Yeah.
underneath the Great Lakes Earthworm Watch. So up in the Great Lakes, they measure the earthworms around all of the different aspects of the boat launches. Because when or when fishermen would come off, it was always looked at, well, they're coming off with night crawlers, so they just throw them off into the forest. Well, it was causing greater
Interesting.
breakdown on the deciduous leaves along those boat launches, and all of a sudden they were getting algae blooms on the boat launches, and so they figured out that it was the earthworms that were actually, the night crawlers that were actually causing the issue because they were so much higher around every one of them.
What would you say the biggest hurdle is for a conventional farmer moving towards like regenerative practice?
It's the abilities to really get the right people to consult with them, to help answer their questions, to help them understand the why. Okay. Again, there's a lot of people who want to utilize various products, but it's the why that the farmers just don't understand. Why is this critically important? And it's
Yes.
once we get through that hurdle of the education on the why, then it becomes easy for producers to sit here and say, makes sense to me. And once it starts to make a little bit of sense, then they can start to move that way. I have a set of brothers. I'm visiting with them tomorrow, specifically Brandon. One brother is all in, and the other brother is very conventionally minded. So for 3 years now, I've been working with both of them, and the other brother who has been conventionally minded is starting to understand the why it's critically important, how I can improve my ability of weed management, how I can improve my crop resilience, how I can improve my aspect by utilizing a program approach of all the things we've just talked about, all 6 points, but to implement only one or two of those at a time versus trying to jump in and implement all six. Again, the
Yeah.
concept of your ground has to be ready for this. It's if you've been corn, soybean, rotation, glyphosate, glufosinate every year, it's going to take a number of years for that ground to be ready to actually readapt to all of this type of regenerative. And it's going to take fungal based biology. It's going to take other aspects of this with cover crops and getting a small area started. And once that starts, then they start to understand why. So critically, it's the why.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Critically. Yeah. And that's great. And then, again, it goes back to that gut of the soil, right? If the gut of the soil is not right, it can't happen. But I agree 100%. A lot of people, and of course, they were never sold the why. They were sold the fertilizer, they were
Mm-hmm.
sold the sprays, and you had
Mm-hmm.
to have them. And so to
Yep.
switch that mindset, you said 3 years, we see that a lot, if not
Yep.
longer,
Right.
and it's because why? Why do I need it? Why? I can buy this and we can fix this problem. Now let's talk a little about livestock integration. What's your perspective on how animals accelerate that soil regeneration? And this is perfect because you're a big animal guy.
Right, exactly. So it comes down to the manures, those aspects of it are critical. Again, every time you haul that out or you put that out there, you're re-inoculating that soil with the bacteria and fungal populations coming out of their gut. Okay. Animal livestock, I just completed some applications with one of our producers in Kansas on trying to mimic the pee out of beef animals, because every place that the animal and the pasture pees, the grasses are always greener and taller and everything else. And everybody always said it was nitrogen, and it's not. It's the electrical conductivity that occurs. So taking this and
Really?
regenerating that abilities to be able to do that. The hooves and the feet of those animals are all different. They're all meant to cut differently. So when you're trying to take cover on top, they'll cut it into the ground differently if they're out on that grass. Okay. They'll cut the grass itself. So all of those things are a part of it. Okay. And the nutrients that
Yeah.
they can bring are different in availability. So again, you can do it through manure, but having livestock gives you a broader spectrum of what's happening from that standpoint. And when you understand the nutrition, it's easy to then start to sit here and say, this is the same why I do this for this. Okay. So when I can find a person who's been around cattle, the first thing I ask him is, when a cow went off feed, what was the first thing you gave them? Well, we gave them sugar to see if they start eating again, or if they had a twisted gut, or what was causing them to be off feed. Okay. Well, when was the last time you ever fed sugar to your soil? I haven't, or I'm thinking about doing it. And that's where it kind of comes down to. So having livestock, having that experience with it is a critical piece for a lot of farmers to be into regenerative agriculture, Brandon.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's really the only way you can really truthfully have a regenerative farm. I believe, is you have to have the livestock aspect of it. I mean, manures, you're close to being regenerative. Usually they're being brought in from somewhere else, but really to create that whole ecosystem and really create regenerative systems, you have to have that livestock.
It makes it quicker and easier, but you can do it through biology, through manures, through other aspects, at least in my experience. If I can get
Yeah.
a solid relationship between a livestock farmer and a grain farmer, it can really make a difference. But sometimes they then try to overdo it, especially in some of the large dairy industry. They're applying too much manures, too many salts, and too much nutrients, and we're actually somewhat moving the ground from being that little bit of good, little bit is good, a lot is not. So I start presentations to grab a farmers, and through a friend of mine, he had used it for years, and basically he says all farmers are morons because they just want to keep putting more on and more on and more on. Okay, so from that standpoint, so it does grab producers' attention when I started meeting that way, and it did for Bob Yonda as well for years. So that's been a part of this whole process, Brandon. But farmers, you're not. You guys want to do what's best for soil, and that's what's critically important. And when they come to that point, either through a something that's affected them, or come to the why, getting it, a son coming home that wants to jump into this. I'm 65 years old, and I work with a lot more younger producers than I do actually older producers, just because they're wanting to do this. They see what has to happen. Okay. They want to go back to what grandpa did in some ways, not go back to this old way completely, but what they can do otherwise, Brandon. So,
And that's exciting because that's going to keep farms alive and family farms going, and the kids are going to come home or they're going to want to learn about it and then stay on the farms, which that's the good thing. They don't see grandpa and dad and everybody else dying their entire life just working as hard as they could to be, strapped all the time. They're actually seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, that it can be profitable. Now, let's go ahead and move into this next section. Biologicals as a bridge. Okay. We're using biologicals and reducing dependency specifically. So how do biologicals allow farmers to earn the right, per se, to reduce synthetic fertilizers and pesticides?
well, again, when we can get the right biology out there through broad spectrum biologicals and like Liquid Life Plus and very fungal based type situations, Brandon, that allows them then to really harvest those nutrients that are out there. And again, if farmer wants to see and understand how many nutrients are out there, we run the TND test, the total nutrient digestion through Regen Labs. And that tells us then there's 5,000 pounds of nitrogen, there's 1,000 pounds of phosphate, there's all of the potassium is out there, the sulfur, the sodiums, and what's got to be released. And the broad spectrum biologicals allow that to happen. You get the nitrogen production, you get the mycorrhizal type fungi or phosphate releasing nutrients, you get the rock breakdown, you get the halophiles for salt breakdown. That allows us that opportunity to start that process, because some of those aren't there. A lot of Dr. Kremer's work out of Missouri shows that, Brandon, that over the years, we've reduced really critical pieces of our bacteria and fungi that aren't releasing nutrients, or they're not controlling diseases, because it's been reduced over the time frame of utilizing the various chemicals that we have. So again, they were all meant as tools. Today, we use them indiscriminately in some cases, and we can't do that. We have to go back to using them when we need them. Integrated pest management is the true start to regenerative agriculture, not insurance pest management. Okay. Still
Yeah, I like that.
same initials, but not the same meaning. Just indiscriminately putting a
Absolutely.
fungicide out there is an insurance policy. Putting an integrated, when we have the reason to put it out there, then we have to use it. But let's put biology right along with it if we can, or right behind it from that standpoint.
Yeah, which will then start helping cut down on all those inputs, right? All those
Right.
other controls. We're growing a healthier plant. The plant's getting what it needs, or the crop, or whatever you want to look at. And then next thing you know, less and less inputs, which means more profit at the end of the day for the farmer or the producer. And then going into that next section, the IPM and biocontrol. So the role of beneficial microbes and natural predators in managing pests without nuclear chemical options. And this is a touchy subject because a lot of biologicals, you have to have FIFRA registration to claim, basically at the end of the day, any type of fungicidal or pesticidal activity, which we all know We go back a lot to the Gauss's law of competitive exclusion, understanding that if we have enough beneficial bacteria or life out there in the system, it will naturally kind of manage the pests and things like that. It works as an ecosystem, right? So is that kind of the same take you guys have on it there at ST Biologicals, Tom?
Yep, we do. But again, we can use natural types and oils when we need to control certain diseases or control certain insects. Again, cold rolled oils are very good because they not only control fungals, they control insects. They also give us micronutrients because they've been cold rolled. So you take the neem oil as an example. It's a great tool in the toolbox to go after insects. Okay. It's a great tool in the toolbox to go after fungals. But it also then gives us all of those micronutrients that are grown from that tree pod in India and it's coming here. Okay. Instead of using Aza Direct or Aza, which is what we're using out of that cold rolled oil to control the insects. So that all of those things work together. So being able to, but biology then creates these fatty acids. They create these abilities to be able to control. So you take a Bacillus subtilis and you're going to get a certain fatty acid on the leaf. And when other bacteria from the air fly in or land on the plant, they're going to basically be killed instantly because of the growth and what the bacillus give off. So it's getting rid of the harsh and coming to something that's softer chemistries or softer abilities to be able to work through these, what we really need. Again, integrated pest, not trying just to go out there and use the strongest thing I've got because tomorrow I don't want to have to worry about it again. Okay. And sometimes you've got to, from that standpoint, all right, you've got to just take it one step at a time. So there's biology to me, if we can get it to grow and understand and really work for us, then we're controlling everything that we need out there, and the plants will be healthier. If the soil is healthy, then the plants are going to be healthy. It's no different than us. If our food is healthy and we are healthy, then our family is going to be healthy. So all of those things work together from that.
Absolutely. And using like those neem oils, things like that, there's also oils in there that microbes actually utilize, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're food sources also for them, which is a great thing. So perfect. Carbon and water. How building soil biology. So whenever we're building soil biology directly impacts water infiltration and drought resilience. How does building that happen?
Well, and again, humus is a part of that carbon cycle. Then microbial active carbon is the food source, all right, for the biology. But the humus basically can hold 80-90% of its weight in water. So when you start doing that abilities of being able to do that, Brandon, really pay dividends when you can get an extra 48 hours or 96 hours or 7 days worth of water being held because we've got that ability of that plant to hold it. Okay. So when you start talking about
Absolutely.
humus at say organic matter at 3.6, but then it's 3% or 4% humus, man, that's, it's tons of humus that's out there and being able to then hold all of that water in its weight from there. And that's what's really the
Absolutely.
resilience that allows us to keep moisture close to those roots and allow those plants then to move nutrients around. Again, potassium can only be moved in the soil through the water solution. So you've got to be able to put that. You have to have water out there, okay? And irrigation water isn't always the best to have to put out there. Irrigation water at 7.5 is not rainwater at 5.6 to 6. Okay, huge
Yeah,
difference.
that pH is a big deal. Big
Yeah.
difference, right?
Yep, it is. Yeah, we're doing a lot of work with that right now with another producer and group in Kansas on trying to understand. I've already got 2 pictures today from the rainstorm of exactly what he was measuring for pH on his rain. Okay, he was taking his rain gauge and measuring the pH just to understand what is the pH of rain coming down, and it was right at 6. Okay, well,
Absolutely.
and contains carbonic acid and other acids that become a part of it. Sulfuric, they're very mild, but that's what really helps grow that soil microbial population versus putting out a 7.5 pH, which is 15 times greater than the 6.0 pH on rainwaters. So
Absolutely. Not only that, that's why you see that huge response usually after rains, right? Even in lawns, things like that, in crops, it doesn't matter. I mean, you see a massive response, like, oh, it got a lot of water, it got a lot of rain. No, what it got is it got the proper pH water into the soil
yes.
profile, allowing those microbial communities to just explode and grow. And not only that, but make also nutrition a little bit more available as well.
Right. Carbonic acid is one of the greatest tools we have in agriculture. It's not one that we do a lot. There's not a lot of things that's talked about that way, but carbonic acid is one of the greatest tools we have to be able to release nutrients, and it's in every raindrop. It's in everything that that we basically do. Again, carbon. It's H2CO3. So what's the three most important nutrients? Hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, and it's in every bit of carbonic acid. Okay. And
Yeah,
carbon dioxide is our friend, not our foe. Okay. So even though a lot of people see it as a terrible thing in global warming, I'm not arguing that, but it's not. It's what agriculture plants need is CO2 because of the carbonic acid. So from there, and hydrogen.
absolutely. Yeah. And we work with that same thing. We've looked a lot at that. So that's exciting.
Hmm.
We'll have to have another talk regarding
Yep.
that carbonic
Yep.
acid specifically.
Yep.
It's an important part. Now let's
Hmm.
kind of look into this last portion of this, and we'll get into a lightning round. But profitability and legacy, right? Like that's what everybody wants to see. A farmer, they want to see profitability. That they want legacy, just like your farm. It's still in the family. It's the legacy of that being around. So let's look at it this way. The bottom line, debunking the myth. Let's debunk this myth that organic and biological means less profitable. Let's discuss a little bit like the ROI of lower input costs, things like that. So a lot of people say, oh, organic, biological, you don't grow nearly as much yield. You don't have this, you don't have that. You also don't have the input cost also,
Right.
or as much. You do have input cost, don't get me wrong, until you can turn completely regenerative, and that's down the road. But the question is let's debunk that real quick. That's not true. Organic and biological means less profitable. That's not
No.
true, right, Tom?
No, it isn't. I mean, it definitely, I mean, you can make a lot more money because we have a lot less inputs. A lot of the things we work with, we can save farmers $30, $40 an acre or more in some cases, and we'll get the same yields or maybe slightly less. But when you're talking about corn, if you can save $40, $50 an acre, that's 15, 20 bushels to the acre. And again, we don't normally
Yes.
see that decrease in yield anyways. We had as one of our guys was riding in a combine in the fall and with the producer, and the guy who had put the monitor in his combine was like, man, this is really good conventional corn. And he turned to him and said, this is organic. He goes, and you're getting, he was getting 250 bushel corn coming across the monitor. It wasn't the field average, but he was still hitting 250 bushels of organic corn because of what he was doing. And the gentleman from the equipment place was like, I never seen organic corn yield like this. Okay. And so you can do these things. You've got more profit coming from some livestock or from another aspect of your operation. Okay. So it's not just a single piece that's going to help you through it. I mean, cattle producers right now is first time we're making a lot of good money in cattle, and it's great. I'm glad to see it that way. Okay.
Yes.
But it's that cattle is add a lot to some of the other parts of their farming operations when they work with it from there. Okay. So when you can
Yeah.
have two or three different income sources coming off of the same acre, even when it's not producing a major crop, it really makes quite a difference. Again, we can grow $100 worth of nutrients with cover crops if given the right conditions and given the right opportunity to really change a field. When I can save a producer $100 an acre in nutrient input costs, and utilize some biology to break it down, they're on board all the time because they're starting to really
Absolutely.
see it then at that point. No,
Yeah.
it, people can't stay with it. Again, there is farming by neglect and farming purposely, and the great managers, are in either side are going to do very, very well. Okay, from there.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And like we were talking before, to switch over to transition, let's look at this transition period. Usually
Uh-huh.
takes 2 to 4 years. And how do we
Mhm.
manage that transition to go from a strictly conventional system into more organic, biological? regenerative type practices. And it takes longer than 2 to 4 years to get the complete, cycle usually turned over. It can be done that quick. It depends on, budgets. It depends on all of those things. What does that transition look like in your eyes, that multi-year plan?
Well, again, you just sit down. If I have a producer who calls me and says, "Hey, I want to start transitioning my ground from conventional to organics," we put together a 6-year projection of what the crops are going to be on all the acres he wants to do and how we can do this. Because sometimes it takes 3 years of just alfalfa up front to help with that transition. Okay, one producer I did that with, I actually had him trade ground with a neighbor because the neighbor needed alfalfa and he didn't need alfalfa. So he could then trade back for corn ground and we could raise it organically. And it worked out well to help that transition. Okay. But in
Sure.
most cases, we start this biology up front. We start working with the producer and bringing in 40 acres, 80 acres, 20 acres, whatever they're comfortable in doing to get used to it. Okay. Or if a producer
Sure.
says in 3 years, I want to start switching over to being fully regenerative, we start working with essential oils as part of his fungicide program or his bactericide program, because then that lets him get used to understanding how to use them by the time he gets into the program fully on some acres. So
Yeah.
the transition is done by how well that producer can handle that management of the different aspects and how fast he wants to get there. Okay. And then setting the right expectations. So I had the one gentleman, he wanted to convert in 3 years because that's what it took to get to organic. But he'd been 20 years of corn and soybeans, right? Glyphosate back and forth. There was no way. I said, you'll be bankrupt by the time the first 2 years is over if you try to do this all at once. And he looked at me and he goes, but I have to. My son's coming home in 3 years from college and wants to have an organic farming operation. Okay, let's start working at it, but it's not going to happen in 3 years. So the realization is not there. He either doesn't come
Yes.
back in 3 years or he comes back with the expectation knowing that it's still going to be another 3 years to transition the rest. Okay. And so
Sure.
it comes down to how can we match up people with different farming operations, different needs, and then start to base it from there. It's not just a one size fits all. That's why it's really, it truly is consulting. It's not just it's got to be a program approach. Okay. It takes in the products and the understanding and the education all at once.
Absolutely. Kind of like the mechanic, right? You come with the toolbox, you come with the diagnostic tools, you come with all those things, you get a plan on what's going on, what needs to be done, and then you go ahead and start implementing things year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, whatever that looks like, or however long that takes. Yeah,
That's
I
right.
think I love that approach as well. That's a great
Mhm.
approach. And that's what we do as well. Like you said, it's not a one size fits all. We got to first see what the soil is. We have to see what's going on. And then, the consultation side of it, right? You're consulting them, you're educating them, you're doing all those things, which is what I'm excited about doing, pushing this out to everybody is, all of our listeners and viewers is that they're getting this from somebody that has 43 years of experience. Most guys, and I'll be honest with you, Tom, your age, they're not about this at this point. Now you spent a lot of years of your life and you've been around the proper people that really push it forward, and it's great to see that. So I guess with that being said, I guess this is kind of the wisdom. What advice could you give for the next generation of farmers looking at their soil as a legacy?
Well, again, the best thing I can say is you take a shovel out there and you start digging. Okay. That's the best way to learn your soil. The best way to learn your fields is you take a shovel out there and you just start digging, and you can learn so much from just even a number of shovelfuls in different areas of the field. What makes up that soil? What makes up those plants? And then dig up some roots and cut some plants apart and dissect the plants just like we did in school and dissecting insects and all of that. You dissect that plant to look at what's being plugged, what's not. So from my standpoint, the greatest thing a young producer can do is basically grab the shovel, put his shadow in the field. As one of my dealers say, I said it early, the greatest thing lacking in the field is the farmer's shadow. Get out there and look at it, because that's the most critical piece. If you don't look at it, driving by at 40 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour is not scouting. Okay. It's walking that field multiple times over and over again. So from a young producer or even any producer who's wanting to get into regenerative agriculture, you start out with the shovel. So I get out of my
I
car. The
like it.
first thing I do is pop open the hatch and pull my shovel out. And farmers are like, what do you need that for? Well, we're going to the field at some point. I'll guarantee you that because I'm not leaving until I dig. So from there,
That's
so
good. Yeah, no.
yep,
So that's great. So that next generation of farmers need to be hands-on. The 40 to 60 mile per hour drive by is not just going to the next field to go hop on another big tractor. It's actually taking the time to hop out of the truck actually and walk at maybe, 2 to
yep.
3 miles per hour and actually take some time looking at their soil and their field. Like this looking back at your 40-year career, okay,
Mhm.
Tom, if you could go back to 1995 or around there and tell every farmer one thing to stop doing immediately, what would it be?
The indiscriminate use of various herbicides, fungicides, insecticides. Really go back and get away from in the 1995 timeframe, and that aspect of it was the era of glyphosate and the indiscriminate use of various things because it was the quickest, easiest thing to do. And come back to true integrated pest management. Keep looking at it. Keep your eye on the field.
I like it. Okay, when the soil is screaming for help, what is the very first visual symptom a farmer can see in the field?
In the field, it's the leaves on the plants and it's the roots that are below the ground. It's actually the roots that are tell you more than the leaf above. From there, if a
Perfect.
crop's not doing well, the first thing you got to do is dig a plant and then dissect it. Cut it down like a corn plant. Cut it down the stalk. Don't cut across the stalk. Cut down the stalk, and it'll tell you everything you need to know. Okay.
I like it. Same thing probably with cattle, right? In the manure that comes from cattle. Same thing. You look at the manure of the cattle, it's going to tell you the health of what's going on in that herd.
Yeah, exactly. I had a gentleman on Saturday that I spoke to a group, and he's like, I cannot get my cattle to give me the yield of cheese I used to. Well, we went through it, and he had started to feed too much fiber, and his manure was now stiffer, and they weren't getting the energy to produce the acids that allowed the butter to turn out of the milk, out of the cream. And so he was just like, I would have never guessed it that way. But the manure that a cattle puts out will tell you everything you need to know about basically what's going on in that gut of that animal. So from there.
Perfect. That's
Yep.
perfect. And then this is the last one, the final question. Is any soil truly too far gone to be regenerated, or is there always a path back?
No, there's always a path. Everything can happen, but it's going to, depending on how bad it is. I work with a field in Utah right now that when you punch in, you take a picture of the soil, it tells you you're on the Bonneville salt flats. Okay. Our dealer out, and we shrunk the area in that field from not growing anything from probably 20 acres down to 5. It's going to take us a long time in those last 5 acres, but we're going to get there. Okay. But it's going to take a while to get there. So no, it's never gone. We just take areas that maybe aren't producing as well and we'll start to shrink them back toward the center. And that's, so no, I haven't found a soil yet in all my career of working with regenerative that I haven't been able to at least try to get back to something from that standpoint. And again, sometimes it takes me a lot longer than I wanted to, but we get there ultimately.
That's wonderful. And we see the same thing, Tom. We've worked on some pretty nasty soils,
Yep.
really nasty soils, even out here. And when you say Bonneville salt flats, I think Wendover, I think out in that area. And I'm like, oh boy, my son, he's actually at flight school out there and he flies over that area.
Uh-huh.
And I see it and I look at it and I think, man, I don't know what could grow out here. And we're kind of in the same boat here where we're at, right? It's high alkaline, just it's bad soil in a lot of
Mhm.
areas, depending
Yeah.
on what side of the valley you're on here. It's interesting because that's right. I mean, we've worked in high salt. I mean, growing plants and things, it's just impossible. I'd have to agree. But yeah, no, but to wrap it up, where can people find you, Tom, or ST Biologicals? What's the best place for them to go if they're searching you guys out or looking for you?
Well, again, we're on all the major medias, LinkedIn and YouTube and all of that. So stbiologicals.com is our website. It's a great place to start. It goes through all these 6 principles and gives an overview of our overview of our products and then talks about our dealers and we can do it. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn or they can reach out through Facebook on to our company and those kind of things. So I'm not much of a Facebook person, but if someone reaches out, our company will be able to get the information to us in that. There's 6 of us across the United States, 6 consultants. We work in dairy nutrition all the way through the regenerative agriculture side of it. So it's stbiologicals.com is the best place. You can put your name in there and someone will call you back. I'll give you that much. And work with Brandon and get the opportunities to get this contact from there. So, we look forward to working with Rocky Mountain Bioag and you, Brandon, Matthew, and your team, and being able to have these opportunities for these really good biologicals and products that are out here that we can speed up the process. We can't necessarily go faster than the biology is going to let us, unfortunately. So from there.
That's right. And, and we look forward to working with you guys as well, Tom. Not only that, but educating people. Like I said, with 43 years of experience, I feel very blessed to have you on here on the Soil Talks podcast to be able to share your knowledge with our listeners, with our viewers, really at the end of the day with the world, right? The way that electronics are today. And it's such an important thing. And we thank you for your time. For your, like I said, your wisdom, your knowledge. We're excited to be working with you guys and excited to see where this is all going to lead as well. So if any of our listeners or viewers ever have questions, don't hesitate. Reach out to us, reach out to ST Biologicals. We're about the same thing, and it's fixing soil, creating plans, and getting farms profitable. So again, Tom, thank you so much for being on today. Don't forget, follow us on Soil Talks or on our YouTube. You can, find us on all the socials as well. Like the video, ask questions, whatever it may be, but we're here to help everybody. And again, Tom, thank you so much for taking your time to be with us today.
Well, thank you, Brandon. Appreciate all the opportunity to do this and look forward to maybe opportunities in the future. So, all right. Thank you.
Great. Yep. You have a great day.
You too.